We are now flying over some of the wilderness areas of northwestern United States and Canada. Here there are thousands of square miles of uninhabited wilderness that is still unexplored. It is in these vast unexplored wilderness areas of North America that a 9-foot-tall, human-like creature is reported to live. This is the home of the Bigfoot, or Sasquatch, as the Indians call him. I'm Jay Smith, and it's my job to give you a first-hand report on Bigfoot. I've been here in this camp for several days. We're told it's Bigfoot country. From this camp, a vast wilderness area is now being searched for the Bigfoot. This is Ron Olson. Ron's from Springfield, Oregon, and he heads up expeditions looking for the Bigfoot. Ron, tell me, just what is a Bigfoot?
Excuse me a minute. Craig, hold that thing up a minute. Bigfoot, or Sasquatch as he's called in Canada, is a giant, hair-covered, human-like creature that's been reported more and more throughout the mountains of the northwestern United States and Canada.
How big do they run?
Many sightings have revealed this creature to be between 7 to 9 feet tall and 600 to 900 pounds.
Well, now, let's hear the words of some people who have had some first-hand experiences with Bigfoot. In 1924, Fred Beck and 4 other miners were in a cabin in the backwoods located in Washington State near St. Helens. There were 4 or 5 creatures who approached the cabin during the night and proceeded to harass the miners by throwing rocks and pounding on the walls and doors of the cabin.
In those days was big shoulders and small hips and hairy. And they was, I'd call them a black turned brown by the sun, the outside hair. That's what I would call them to be. And muscular. And they looked like they was about 8, 9 foot tall. I've no way to tell.
Another miner and prospector, Albert Ostman, in 1924 was camped near Toba Inlet in British Columbia. While asleep in a sleeping bag, he was picked up and packed several miles. Daylight found him in a small valley encircled by cliffs. This was home for a family of these creatures. He was able to escape after 6 days by getting them sick on a box of snuff. Now let's listen to Mr. Ostman's experience.
Well, there was 4 of them, and none of them look alike. There was what I call the old man, because I had no scale or any rules for measurement, but he was at least 8 feet tall, and must have weighed at least 800 pounds. But what I call the old lady, she couldn't have been over about 600-700 pounds. She was probably 7 feet tall, and they were all covered with hair.
By 1956, there had been several such reported sightings, which had been reported in small local newspapers. Mr. John Green, publisher of a newspaper at Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia, began investigating some of these sightings. Here is John Green to report on a sighting he investigated in 1957.
When I first came here in about 1957, it was still pretty well open. But all this has grown up since then. Now, what happened at that time was that Mrs. George Chapman, who lived in a house down by the river behind me here, she was in the house and their children were outside. One of them came in and told her that there was a cow coming out of the woods. So she looked out and she saw this man-like thing, but about 8 feet tall and completely covered with hair like a bear. And she knew it to be a Sasquatch. This was, quite a well-known thing to the Indian people. And she was frightened, so she took the children, ran down to the river, and then through the graveyard, which is right behind me here, and came out just about here onto the track, and then ran on down to Ruby Creek. Now, she'd really only had one quick look at the thing, so it wouldn't be that convincing a story, except that a lot of people immediately went back there and saw these enormous tracks. Mr. Tifting, of course, was one of them, and can describe just what the tracks were like and what they did.
Well, he came through the bush into the shed, or the lean-to of the house, and there was a barrel of dried fish with smoked salmon, rather. And he broke the barrel, and there was some fish eaten there and thrown around. And then he went down the river bank and apparently took a drink, and then come back up on the other side of the house, through the garden patch, and up to CPR fence, and stepped with 1 foot on that side of the fence and 1 foot on this side of the fence. I can walk right over it. And the footprints was about 18 inches, like. And then he went across there and over to the next fence there and went right up the hillside. And that's as far as we could follow it.
As John Green and others began to seriously investigate reported sightings, they found that many aspects of the sightings were the same. One of the first detailed drawings of a Sasquatch was made by Mrs. Myrtle Walton of British Columbia. Her father, William Rowe, had the unique experience of being able to watch a Sasquatch at close range. Mrs. Walton now tells us how it came about.
My dad come and asked me to draw a picture of this animal or human for him. He called it a Sasquatch, so he could send it to this John Green, and I drawed the picture for him, and just exactly the way he told me he wanted it drawn. There was a few things he changed on it, like he made the arms a lot heavier, and the head was different, and the breast was different, and the back part was different. So between the two of us, we patched it all up and we sent it to John Green.
As the interested investigators became better known, there were more and more sightings and evidences being submitted to them. Mr. Richard Grover, another investigator, reports on a sighting in a residential area just outside of Tacoma, Washington.
This is the site of the Fife Heights incident. One morning, approximately 4 o'clock, Dick Hancock and his friend came along this road, stopping the car right here when they saw a huge creature behind that sign over there. It was so tall, its head was above the street sign. The creature took approximately 3 steps, crossing the road. It was blinded by the headlights, and it almost bumped into this sign. As it sidestepped, it caught this sign before it went down over the hill. This is the sign that the creature struck, and it bent it like this, leaving these indentations or scratch marks. It has been estimated by experts that it took 5